gentlemen, you Gooshbagz, welcome to the Week 13 edition of the Gooshbagz Fantasy Football League podcast. It's going to be a great one because I got my brother from another mother, Adam Stovall here, fresh off of his defeat to my Scary Terrys. How you doing today, Adam?
I'm doing pretty good. Done with work, ready for a podcast. I want to say thank you for having me on. Hello to all the hundreds of thousands of viewers.
Oh, yeah.
And then hello to my mom. Mom, I made it.
You made it. You're on the big screen now, so next you're gonna be getting dividends paid out from this podcast pretty soon. I'm sure of it. Exactly. All right, so we had some big news in the NFL this week. Mostly some bad beats from the NFL teams. The Bengals beat the Jets, giving them their first win of the year. How exciting is that? Miami, what's that?
Thanking Tua.
Yeah, right. Well, they're what happened to their tanking? They're not tanking anymore. But I guess they are. They had one win to give because I think the Redskins and the Dolphins both have 2 wins at least. So,
how many teams have never won a game before?
Only one.
The Lions?
Yeah, the Lions.
Yeah, you can't join that list.
Exactly. So, the Bengals did not join that list. And then speaking of Miami beat the Eagles. I don't know if that's bad for the Eagles or good for Miami, or maybe it's a little bit of both. But
that trick play was good for the fans, though.
Oh, it was. That was insane. That trick play, I've never seen something like that in the NFL. I've seen it in college where they do the center and I guess this guy was the punter, but yeah, I've never really seen that done in the NFL too much. So that was exciting to see. And unfortunately, I was going to bring this up later, but I'll bring it up now. The kicker for that team, since he got a receiving touchdown, I thought maybe he was going to make it into the waiver wire team because he got those 6 points from the touchdown. He just missed it by a point. So
behind who?
I got it down here. Brandon McManus had 15 points, and then Jason Sanders had 13.6 points with that touchdown. Because he got... Yeah, I know. It was a 1-yard pass, so he got 1 receiving yard. He had a touchdown, and he had a catch. So he had 0.6 points added on to his 6 for the touchdown. So he ended up with 13.6. So there you go. And, Miami surprisingly doing well. I guess they got Ryan Fitzpatrick under center, so, he's been solid for him, which is very surprising. Maybe they just needed a quarterback change in Miami to kind of send him on the right path. But what's up?
You got that magic, that Fitz magic.
He does. Fitz magic for sure. And then the Redskins beat the Panthers. Kyle Allen just looked atrocious this week. The whole Panthers offense and their defense just got beat down by the Redskins. So that was exciting. Redskins are, even with Dwayne Haskins at the helm, they got most of their points off the run game. But
I think I saw that the Panthers have a losing record. I think.
I
could be wrong.
Know. I don't know off the top of my head. They might. I mean, they really haven't been doing great this year. After, I think Kyle Allen had 1 good game, and then let's see, they're 3rd in the NFC South. Let's look at the standings.
I can't look it up because I have my phone using this.
Yeah, I've got it. They're 5-7. Yeah, so they're not doing so hot. Not making the playoffs this year.
I figured with Christian McCaffrey going off every week and always being in the stud column, that they're always winning games.
You would think so, but he's the only one that's been doing anything on that team. So, and then New England lost to the Texans. That was huge. That Sunday night game. That was fun to watch because any New England loss is a good game to watch. So,
New England lost, Dallas lost, and 2 other teams lost. And I saw something that said it was a win for America. So.
Oh yeah. Anytime You get a New England loss, and yeah, we them boys losing on top of that. It's always a good time. Good time.
Yeah.
All right, so the top scorer in the league this week was Zerline. Never hit you. I did not. With 118. Actually, I said that wrong. It's you're tearing me apart, Lisa. He had 118.6 fantasy points this week, which is the second lowest week winner of the year. So it was another low scoring week for the league this year. So I mean I've had multiple weeks over that 118 point mark, and I've only won once the $10. So I have not yet sent him the $10. I will do it tonight, and that will get done after the podcast. So moving on to the studs of the week this week. At the quarterback position, QB1, Deshaun Watson. I had to add him in here because I did not have him originally in my oh yeah, I did, because it was Sunday night, not Monday night. Deshaun Jackson had 28.4 fantasy points. He had 234 passing yards with 3 touchdowns and 1 rush. I put catch. That was wrong. 1 rush for 6 yards. Oh, no. He did have 1 catch because he caught that touchdown. That's right. For 6 yards and a receiving touchdown. You remember that play? Did you watch this game?
No, I was driving home. Actually, take that back. Chad stole my car and drove me home.
That's right. I remember that. Yeah, so this play was an insane play. It was a double reverse. And so Deshaun Watson handed it off to like Will Fuller or somebody. Or no, the running back, Mark Ingram. He handed it off to Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram ran to the side, handed it off to DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins ran around with Deshaun Watson behind him, and they did like an option play. So like, just DeAndre Hopkins ran until he was about to get tackled, and then he threw it. It happened to be a forward throw, just barely, to Deshaun Watson. So Deshaun Watson got a receiving touchdown and 6 receiving yards, and DeAndre Hopkins got points for a passing touchdown. So that was exciting.
Very nice.
Yeah. That was a fun play. I like seeing plays like that. Like, all sorts of trick plays are being done this week. So, and then the quarterback number 2 on the week was Aaron Rodgers. He had 28.1 fantasy points. He had 243 passing yards and 4 touchdowns, which really shouldn't be a surprise because the Giants suck. So he lit up the New York Giants. Their defense has been atrocious and basically a cheat code for all quarterbacks playing against them. So not really a surprise. And then quarterback 3, this might have been a surprise to all y'all. Ryan Fitzpatrick, Fitzmagic, for 26.8 fantasy points. He had 365 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. He also had 1 interception and a 2-point conversion to cancel out that interception. Miami, they took down Philadelphia defense. It's a very beatable defense in the air. So Fitz, he's like, I was talking about this with Chad. He's like 38 years old, and he's playing like a dude who's got nothing to lose. So he's what's that?
He doesn't.
I know he doesn't. He's just playing to have fun. That's all he cares about, and he's getting wins along the way. I think having fun really kind of pushes it helps the team play better.
He's like a Nick Foles to me. He's like, he serves as a backup and comes in and does pretty well.
Yeah, I guess in that regard, he would be similar to a Nick Foles. Yeah, because Nick Foles as a starter really hasn't done so hot.
Not this year. And I don't think he's going to be Super Bowl bound again anytime soon. So
No, probably not. Yeah, especially the way he's been playing this year. So I think, well, and now he's benched again, so there's that. But, yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick, I mean, he plays differently than Nick Foles, but like you said, as far as like being a backup and coming in and getting wins, that's kind of what he does. So on to the running back position this week. James White was the running back 1. Very surprising. All of these top 4 running backs were the most surprising running backs you'd see in the top 4 ever. So James White had 33.7 fantasy points. He had 14 rushes for 79 yards. He also had 8 catches for 98 yards and 2 touchdowns. And New England needed him because they were behind all game to the Texans. So it was a very good game script for James White this week. And normally he's only getting 10 points a week, right about there. Like, that's kind of what he's been doing all year. And then all of a sudden he just went ham. And unfortunately, he was on the bench. Along with all the rest of these top 4 running backs, they were all on benches this week. Nobody, they were all owned, but none of them were played. So Darius Geis was the running back 2 this week. He had 26.7 fantasy points. He had 10 rushes for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had 2 catches for 8 yards. So very efficient in the running game. He ran for 12.2 yards a carry. It's insane. It's a big number. So both him. What's that?
AP did well in the backfield too this weekend.
He did, yeah. Both of them did. The 2 of them were basically the only offense for Washington this week. They just ran all over Carolina. So, Rashad Penny was running back number 3. He had 24.7 fantasy points. He had 15 rushes for 74 yards and 1 touchdown. He also had 4 catches for 33 yards and a touchdown. This was disappointing to me as a Chris Carson owner. It was very sad to see him get all this work. He got a lot of work partly because Carson seemed to be in and out of the game. Carson got hit in like one of the first couple drives, and it looked like it was a pretty serious potential concussion sort of play. I don't know. I didn't actually see it. That's just what I heard. Did you end up watching that?
I saw bits and pieces of it. I don't own Chris Carson because you do, but I own Rashad Penny. And I think had I started him, I think I might have edged you out.
Oh, that wouldn't have been a question. Yeah, you definitely would have beat me. Yeah. Did you have Penny and Mostert?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Well, you sat them both. So, yeah, if you had played those 2, you definitely would have beat me. So, yeah, so Raheem Mostert was the running back 4 on the week, and he had 19 rushes for 146 yards and a touchdown. In the absence of Breida and Damian Williams, Mostert and I put Darrell Williams, but Darrell Williams actually got hurt in this game, and it was Darwin Thompson who stepped up and got a lot of work since Darrell Williams was out too, and LaShawn McCoy wasn't there, so they just have a depleted running back core over there in Kansas City. Wait, no, Breida. That doesn't make sense. Breida's not on this team. Breida's on San Francisco. Yeah, I lied. So Damian Williams was out. LaShawn McCoy was out. So wait. I'm all over the place. Raheem Mostert is on the 49ers. So Breida was out. Damian Williams is not on that team.
He's Kansas City.
Yeah. And Darrell Williams is also on Kansas City. So get that shit out of here. All right. Breida was out. Tevin Coleman was hurt, I believe, too. Or no, he just didn't get any work. And Mostert just kind of took it over this week. That's what happened. All right. I'm back on top of it. See, you don't have to worry about being nervous or anything. I say stupid shit all the time. So I'm more confused than you are right now. So, anyways, none of these top 4 running backs were played at all this week. So very surprising. I think just none of these guys are regular starters. So it was very interesting that they were the top 4 running backs this week. Did you have something to say or no? I thought you were about to say something.
I didn't have anything to say to that one.
No, you're good. All right, so on to the wide receiver position. What's up?
I was saying that the studs aren't coming through, and it's the backups, it seems like, are the low-key guys.
Yeah, at least, yeah, in both the running back and the wide receiver position, it seems like. Although Shawn Jeffery's a stud, but it was his first game back from an injury. But anyways, wide receiver 1 was Devante Parker this week. He had 31.4 fantasy points. He had 7 catches for 159 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, he has been a monster, and I never thought I would say that about any Dolphins player at all this year. Like, it seems just like week 2 or 3, I was like, nobody's ever going to play a Dolphins player ever. And look who is in the top. Like, we also have a tight end from Miami who was good this week. He was in tight end 2 this week. So like 3 Dolphins are in the studs category this week. 3 of them. How did that happen? We're not supposed to play any Dolphins at all. Never. At least the way this year was going. Anyways, you have to play Devante Parker. He's been, I think since, I don't know, this is off the top of my head, but I think since week 4 in PPR formats, he is the number 4 wide receiver since week 4. Yeah, it's insane.
How has he not gotten more recognition then?
Because he's been getting like a solid. He hasn't had the boom games. He's had like the solid like 15 and below point games, like between 10 and 15 points like every single week. So he's been like a solid wide receiver 2 every week, but like nobody has talked about him because he hasn't had a big game like this one. But now he has, and he's going to get recognition going forward, I think. Plus, he's got a super easy schedule coming up. So, but Shawn Jeffery, speaking of Shawn Jeffery, he was the wide receiver 2 on the week. He had 24.2 fantasy points. He had 9 catches for 137 yards and a touchdown. And this was a good game on his first game back from injury. Like I said, somebody had to, because Carson Wentz, he has nobody to throw to with all of these people hurt. Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson was on Philadelphia, right? This year. He went back to Philadelphia this year. And he got hurt. Yeah.
He went to receiver, though, after week 1 with like 34 points, I think.
Yeah.
And never came back because of abdominal strains.
Yeah, after Sammy Watkins. He didn't come back either, but he never got hurt. Sammy Watkins had a massive game in week 1. He had like 42 fantasy points, and everybody was freaking out, saying Sammy Watkins is going to be the beast this year. And then after that game, I don't think he had a single other good game since then. It's been awful. But yeah, so Alshon Jeffrey, Wentz needed somebody to throw to. He couldn't just keep throwing to Ertz and Goddard all the time, so he needed somebody else to stretch the field. He had a decent game against Miami last week, and maybe he'll be able to solidify Carson Wentz and give him some good games going forward. So Kenny Golladay was the wide receiver 3 on the week. He had 23.8 fantasy points. He had 4 catches for 158 yards and a touchdown. Against Chicago this week, he had 158 yards and a touchdown. They've been a tough matchup for wide receivers. They haven't been so great against the run recently, but against wide receivers and quarterbacks, they've been pretty good. So
frustrated.
Yeah, I can imagine. Their offense really hasn't gotten their shit together, but their defense has they've still been good. They've been pretty good. But yeah, if their offense can't score any points, then you can't win any games. So, but Kenny Golladay is the wide receiver 5 on the year. That snuck up on me. I looked at that yesterday when I was writing the show doc, and I was like, he's wide receiver 5? Like, you don't even, like, he's had a lot of like boom games and then some like bust games. He's been kind of a boomer bust, but he's been mostly in the boom category, and he's the wide receiver 5. Do you think that he's going to be a top 10 drafted wide receiver next year? See, you don't think of him that way.
I think he will be.
Yeah?
Not top 10 overall, but top 10 for wide receivers, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Just my guess.
Right. I guess you don't really think of him that way as a top 10, but, maybe going forward, that's what he is. But in the tight end position, Tyler Higbee, the unknown Rams tight end. I guess he's not super unknown, but not too many people know about him. He's got 20.2 fantasy points this week. He had 7 catches for 107 yards and a touchdown. So Arizona, I mentioned this like every single week. Arizona, because every single week the tight end who plays against Arizona is in the studs category without fail. He's been benefited. What's that?
How many weeks in a row?
Oh, I don't know. I say that it's probably not true. It's probably not every single week, but Ross Dwelley, the backup for George Kittle, got 2 touchdowns against Arizona. Like, nobody's fucking heard of Ross Dwelley. Who is Ross Dwelley? Like, exactly. Nobody. Like, everybody except for Tyler Eifert has done well against the Arizona Cardinals. They're basically a cheat code for tight ends. Any tight end that's going up against Arizona, they're going to be a beast. So that's just for the future, for the next 3 games here. You could try to get the top score of the week and get your $10 back. Try to get some money. Play those. You have nothing to lose now. Play those tight ends. So, and the tight end 2 this week was Micah Sickie. He had 16.4 fantasy points. He had 5 catches for 79 yards and a touchdown. So, like I said before, I can't believe that I put 3 Miami players in the studs category this week. It's insane. It's craziness. Absolute.
Will it happen again the rest of the year at all?
3 in the top, essentially 3 of their position.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna say it could. I think there's a decent chance. Yeah, because let me tell you that their matchups going forward. Let me find them really quick, because it's literally like the easiest fucking matchups. They're playing against the Jets this week, who has been okay. Let's see. Hang on, sorry, I'm looking them up. Yeah, so they're playing the Jets this week. They're playing the Giants in Week 15, and they're playing Cincinnati in Week 16. But then they have New England. But, that's Week 17, and nobody cares. But, yeah, so they're playing against 3 pretty decent matchups in the next 3 weeks. So I think that there's a high possibility that that 3 of them could be in the top again in the studs category. So now moving on to the people who disappointed us the most this week. Now, actually, your team, your whole entire team, some of your team, actually, none of your team is on this duds list, Adam. Your team had like average games, like you didn't have awful games, besides Greg Olsen.
Yeah.
But otherwise, did he get hurt? I think he got hurt, though.
I'm not.
Yeah. But anyways, we'll talk about that more when we get there. For the duds category, in the quarterback position, Jameis Winston had 10.7 points. Now, I wouldn't necessarily consider that a disappointment, because that's just what you get from Jameis Winston. That like he could have a monster fantasy football game, but then he could also have like an awful fantasy football game. Now, this was awful in a way that was interesting for Jameis Winston. Usually when he has a bad fantasy football game, it's because he threw like 3 interceptions and a fumble or something like that. But he just threw for 268 passing yards with no touchdowns and no interceptions, and he ran for 20 yards. So it was literally all a rushing game for Tampa Bay, and I think there were a couple of turnovers that gave him a pretty short field to work with too. So and Peyton Barber got the 2 touchdowns for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like, what? I guess I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant later when we talk about Ronald Jones, because I don't know what's going on in that backfield. So, but yeah, it was mostly a rushing game for Tampa Bay, specifically for Peyton Barber. So, yeah, Jameis Winston was disappointing, but like I said, you got the ups with the downs with Jameis Winston. So, and then the dud number 2 was on my team, Kyler Murray. This week, he only had 13.3 fantasy points. He looked atrocious, and he saved his week. He threw for 163 yards, and he threw an interception. His saving grace was a rushing touchdown that got him that extra 6 points, that put him above single digits as a quarterback. Like, that was... Thank goodness he scored that, because it would have been a much closer game between us, and that would have terrified me. What's that?
It hurt me right here.
I know. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Every time that like you talk and I am also talking, I cannot hear it. So, um, it's something that the audio doesn't send your voice through to me. So if I'm asking you to repeat a lot because the sound is not coming to me. So which means it's not being picked up on the recording. So not a problem. I'll just ask you to repeat yourself a lot. So yeah, for the running back category, Ronald Jones had 0.8 fantasy points. He had 6 rushes for 8 yards. 6 rushes for 8 yards and 0 catches. And for some unknown reason, Peyton Barber rushed for 17 times this week. Who knows what Bruce Arians is thinking from week to week. However, I did start this rant, but Bruce Arians apparently came out after the game and said that Ronald Jones was benched for a missed blitz pickup. He didn't pick up a blitz. Jameis Winston got sacked, and Ronald Jones got benched for it. So that's why I think he didn't get as much work, because he missed that blitz pickup. So I think that's why he put in Peyton Barber for most of that. And I don't know if going forward, if Ronald Jones is going to be playing more or if Peyton Barber is going to be playing more, but neither of them are really reliable right now because you don't know who's going to do well each week. So the other dud this week was Tevin Coleman of the San Francisco 49ers, not of the Kansas City Chiefs. He had 2 fantasy points this week. He had 5 rushes for 6 yards and 1 catch for 9 yards. So Colonel Mustard took over the rushing game this week. Raheem Mostert in San Francisco. Some of these backfields, we were just talking about that. They're very hard to decipher with all the injuries and replacements. I get them all mixed up. Kansas City's mixed up with the 49ers. Is mixed up with, and who on the 49ers is healthy, who, nobody knows. Breed is always hurt, so you can assume that. But, it's just kind of crazy how there's nothing going on really with it's tough to figure out what's going on in a lot of these backfields. So, yeah, they do. They do. There's a reason that a lot of people go, or some people go with the 0 running back strategy. Have you heard of it?
No.
For drafting, it's not that you draft no running backs. It's that in the first 3 rounds or so, they draft non-running backs. So they'll pick up the top wide receivers, 2 top wide receivers, maybe one of the top tight ends. So they'll grab a Kelsey, they'll grab DeAndre Hopkins or them, and they'll grab maybe a Pat Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. So they'll the first 3 or 4 rounds, it's basically you're hoping to hit on the lower end starting running backs that have potential. So I think I got Chris Carson in the 4th round or 5th round or something. It's grabbing a Chris Carson as your first running back and hoping that he does really well, and then you're basically getting low end starting running backs, and then you're picking up backup running backs, and you're hoping that one of the main starters gets hurt. So say I have Dalvin Cook, but say you're doing 0 running backs and you have Alexander Madison on your team, and you're hoping that Dalvin Cook gets hurt, essentially. So that's what they do. They hope to hit on those lower end starting running backs and then hit on the injuries that inevitably happen to running backs, because running backs suck and they get hurt, essentially. So it's an interesting strategy. I've never done it, and I don't know if I will ever do it because I don't like relying on that, and I feel like that's way too much stress to hope that a injury happens. So I don't know. But anyways, moving on to the wide receiver duds this week. Tyler Lockett had 0 fantasy points. He goosed last night, which was very surprising. It was mostly a running back game. Rashad Penny went nuts. Chris Carson went nuts. And actually, I found out today that apparently Tyler Lockett was not feeling well going into this game. He had some sort of stomach bug or something, and he was not 100% going into the game. So that could be why. Maybe he didn't play as much. I I didn't watch the full game. I watched a little bit of it, but it sounds like he wasn't feeling the best going into it, and he just didn't have a good game. But
Aaron last night, and watching the game with him, he was less than pleased with the performance from Tyler Lockett. He really wanted the $10.
oh, I'm sure. Yeah, he was lighting up the chat last night after like Russell Wilson threw the touchdown to not Tyler Lockett, and then yeah, basically anything that wasn't going to Tyler Lockett, he was like, no. But yeah, it was a rough life for Aaron this week, but he still won. He just didn't get that $10 this week. Yeah, exactly. So Will Fuller had 1.3 fantasy points this week. He only had one catch for 8 yards. And I always say when Will Fuller comes up, this is just who he is. He's the epitome of boomer bust. He has no floor. His floor is 0. And his ceiling is like 40 points. So today was just a bust against the usually tough New England defense. They weren't so tough this week, but the ball just didn't go to Will Fuller too much this week. And then Christian Kirk was a wide receiver 3, or the dud wide receiver 3 this week. He had 3.8 fantasy points. He had 3 catches for 23 yards. It was a rough game for Arizona against the Rams. We were watching that one, and it was just a blowout. And Kyler Murray had no time against the Rams defense, and he was just scrambling all over the place, trying not to get sacked, and he could not get the ball out to Christian Kirk this week. So hopefully they turn it around this upcoming week, and although they are playing Pittsburgh, so we'll see how that goes. At the tight end position, the duds for tight ends this week. Hunter Henry only had 2 fantasy points. He had 2 catches for 10 yards this week, and he was not used too much in that Broncos-Chargers game. I don't really know who was. Mike Williams had a good game. He had over 100 yards. I guess Phillip Rivers just wasn't looking Hunter Henry's way this week. And then George Kittle had 2.4 fantasy points. This was a disappointment. He only had 2 catches for 17 yards. He had, I thought, a decent matchup this week, but they just ran the ball the whole game. Raheem Mostert just took over the game, and Garoppolo just basically managed this week. Nobody in the passing game really did well. I think the most yards was like 40 yards out of Sanders or something. That was about it. Or Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel had a longer touchdown, I think. That was it. But
yeah, Sanders didn't do too hot this week. It's all now.
Yeah.
You have them. So.
Yeah, exactly. But all right, on to the matchup reactions for this week. Now, I know this is what you've been waiting for, Adam. You've been waiting for our matchup because it was just a great one, and you know, it was an epic one to go down in history as the Scary Terrys keep their playoff hopes alive. So this was, what's up?
You're welcome.
Thank you. This is the Scary Terrys versus Adams Rogers Cup. The Scary Terrys won 98 to 90.5 fantasy points. That was weird. Usually there's like a point, and then, I don't know. I screwed that up, but that's okay. The Scary Terrys take down, I already said that. They keep their playoff hopes alive this week, and it is coming down to the wire. We have a special segment this week. We're going to go over the fantasy playoff scenarios. So we will talk about all the playoff scenarios near the end of this episode after these matchups. So the studs on the Scary Terrys this week, I had Chris Carson, who had a good game despite Rashad Penny also having a good game. Chris Carson had 17.4 fantasy points. He kicked ass. I thought he was going to be out after the first drive, and then he came back in and he continued to just do what Chris Carson does. He ran well against a very difficult Minnesota Vikings defense. So Keenan Allen came through for me this week. Dude, this felt so good that Keenan Allen and Cooper Kupp both came through for me. They both had just over 15 points for 6 catches, 60-something yards, and a touchdown. Both of them had almost identical games. It was fantastic. and it was just enough to get me the win this week. And I've been having trouble with my wide receiver position the whole fucking year. This whole year, I've had trouble at the wide receiver position, and finally, they came through for me. They came through. All the trades that I made, I didn't start with Keenan Allen or Cooper Kupp. And when I traded for them, they played like crap. So now, they finally came through, and I hope they continue to do so as we go along. The duds this week, as I already mentioned, George Kittle for my team didn't do so hot. The Jets defense, I thought this was kind of a lock against Cincinnati. However, the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton, took him down. So that was really unfortunate.
He came back, right? Like first week back.
Yeah. So he was sat for Ryan Finley. They were going to play Ryan Finley the rest of the year, and then Ryan Finley sucked, like way worse than Andy Dalton. So they put Andy Dalton back in, and he got him the win. So I don't know if Ryan Finley's coming back or not. Probably not. But
no. So.
Yeah. Anyway, on to Rogers Cup, the studs this week. This one, I was most frustrated about, Adam, because I dropped him because I thought he was going to have a bad game against Dallas. And he's got an awful schedule coming up. So I don't feel too bad. I was concerned about this week. But after this, he has very tough matchups. Josh Allen got you 23.5 fantasy points. I dropped him after his monster week of 33 fantasy points because I knew he had a rough schedule coming forward. But he had 231 passing yards and a passing touchdown, along with 43 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. So, do you have anything to say about why you decided to pick up Josh Allen and play him against me, or?
Because I traded away Aaron Rodgers.
I guess that's a reason enough. It wasn't any of like a revenge game narrative or anything, was it?
Oh, I forgot you had him, actually.
Yeah. Well, that makes it less fun, Adam. I'm just messing. Either way, it still ended up being a revenge game because you still picked him up and played him against me. So I was frustrated about that, and I thought it was going to be the end of me, but it worked out. So that was good. And he had a great game for you, so you can't really complain about Josh Allen. Now Zeke had 17.2 fantasy points. He had 12 rushes for 71 yards. He also had 7 catches for 66 yards. He didn't have any touchdowns, but he had a very solid game based off of the catches and the yardages. So that was good. How does it feel to have a consistent Zeke on your team?
Well, I'll take consistent if it's a nice high consistent too. I mean, not like breakout like 20 plus a game, but like I'll take 15-ish though.
Yeah.
And be fine with that. So.
Yeah, well, I bet you're glad you got rid of Saquon because he wasn't giving you that this year.
He has been a huge disappointment. I could have had Christian McCaffrey at number 1 overall.
I know. Yeah, well, nobody was picking Christian McCaffrey with the first pick overall, so I wouldn't feel bad about that.
In my my mock drafts, people picked Kamara first.
Yeah, a lot of people were talking about Kamara. Saquon was the pretty obvious number 1. And then if Zeke would have been back like sooner, because he was holding out for a while. If Zeke would have been back sooner, he might have been in contention because he ended up having like 330 carries last year, which is an insane number of carries. And then he also had a lot of catches. Like he was catching the ball a lot last year. And this year, I mentioned this in the chat and I got some backlash on it, but I feel like Zeke hasn't been as solid as he was last year. Like he's been pretty consistent, but he hasn't had those like ceiling games that you're looking for from Zeke.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So, but anyways, on to your duds category. Greg Olsen was your only dud this week.
He's my dud every week.
That's true. I'm surprised that you're still starting him. I bet you could get a better start out of somebody from the waiver wire.
Jack Doyle.
He's he's a big pickup this week. I would be happy if you picked him up this week. That means somebody that I'm playing against did not pick him up. So I would be happy, more than happy, if you picked him up this week. He hasn't been great most of this year. Like you said, only a couple of boom games, but he's just been kind of, less than average this year. But the rest of your team just kind of had average games, like a lot in the high single digits and like low teens. Nothing, nothing too good, nothing too bad, and it wasn't quite enough to get you to win this week. So I apologize for nothing. I am glad that I won this week, but I know you're kind of laid back on the rest of this week or this season because you're not in the playoffs. So, but
Peaceful.
what's up?
Peaceful.
Yeah, it's been. You said even though it's the first time you missed the playoffs, it's been your favorite year of fantasy football.
I just sit back, relax.
And actually enjoy football without freaking out about your team. Yeah. All right, on to matchup number 2. Zerline, I'll never hit you. You're tearing me apart. Versus Josh Jacobs, Jingleheimer Schmidt. His name is my name too. All right, Zerline, I never hit you. Won 118.6 fantasy points as the top scorer this week to Josh Jacobs, Jingleheimer Schmidt's 84.4 fantasy points. Zerline is working on, actually, I put this before I figured out all the playoff stuff. Zerline has locked down a playoff spot with a much-needed win versus Josh Jacobs, Jingleheimer Schmidt this week. So, Zerline, I never hit you. The studs on his team. Derrick Henry had 22.1 fantasy points. And I thought this was very interesting. I heard this from so a couple of the podcasts I listened to, but they're saying the last 16 games he's played, which like includes the second half of last season, he's had 1,700 rushing yards and 18 rushing touchdowns. Like, he's been a beast. And he's been kind of similar to Zeke this year, where he's been like getting the yards and getting a touchdown, and he's only been getting like in the teens points wise. And he hasn't had a monster game until this week. So he had a really good game, and he's been a very solid running back for Benaya this year.
Good pickup for him.
It was a good pickup. And then Devante Parker boomed for him this week. He had 31.4 fantasy points. So we already talked about him. Devante Parker, I guess he's kind of a beast. He's a beast. And in the duds category for Benaya, he had Philadelphia's defense, who got him -1 points, and he still had the top score. Like, his defense was a handicap for him this week, and he was still the top scorer of the week. It's insane. But for Josh Jacobs, Jingleheimer Schmidt, the studs for him, he just had one. Just one. Carson Wentz had 24.4 fantasy points. He had 310 passing yards with 3 touchdowns and an interception. He finally had a good game. It was against Miami, so, take it with a grain of salt. We'll see how he goes going forward. He did get, like I said, like we mentioned, he did get Shawn Jeffery back, so maybe he'll be a little bit more solid going forward. And then in the duds category, he had Ronald Jones and Christian Kirk, who, just pooped themselves this week. That's just what happened. So, matchup number 3, Too Many Cooks versus Mixin Mac. Now, this was a barn burner. Too Many Cooks just barely lost to Mixin Mac. Mixin Mac won 91.5 to 90.5. It was 1 point difference. What a crazy game. Mixin Mac gets the upset this week against Too Many Cooks to keep dancing toward his playoffs. He's barely got a playoff opportunity. Just barely. But he's got to win this week. We'll talk about it. Sorry, I keep getting ahead of myself. I'm so excited to talk about the playoff stuff. But yeah, he's still in the playoff hunt. So the studs for Mixin Mac this week. He had Lamar Jackson, who had 22.3 fantasy points, who took down a tough 49ers defense this week. Lamar Jackson is officially matchup proof. Played against the 49ers D, they couldn't stop him. So he's matchup proof. Devante Adams had a big game this week against the Giants. A porous Giants defense. He had 21.4 fantasy points. He had 6 catches for 64 yards and 2 touchdowns. So that was a big week for Devante Adams. In the duds category for Mixin Mac, Jonathan Williams had 3 fantasy points. Now this was kind of unfortunate. He had a rough day, and Jordan Wilkins came back. He was technically active the week before, so 2 games ago. But he didn't really get much work, and Jonathan Williams went nuts, had over 100 rushing yards and whatnot. But Jordan Wilkins was actually back this week, and he got a lot of the work. So Jonathan Williams didn't really get too much action this week. He only had 3 fantasy points. And then Brett Mayer had -1 fantasy points. He had 1 extra point and 2 missed field goals. Talk about bad kicking. You know all about bad kicking.
I'm a Bears fan.
Of course you know about bad kicking. Apparently Dallas does too. So he kind of had a rough time on Thanksgiving getting the ball through the uprights. So
well, last night, the Vikings kicker missed a field goal too. That was an extra point. I think it was.
Really?
I think it was an extra point.
I don't even know who the kicker is now. Is it still? It's not still Dan Bailey, is it?
It is.
Is it Dan Bailey? Well, that's unfortunate. He's usually been pretty solid. So, who knows? Mason Crosby's the only reliable kicker in the NFC North. No, and Matt Prater. Matt Prater's a beast. Yeah. Did you see that onside kick that Matt Prater kicked on Thanksgiving? It was against the Bears.
Nope.
Oh, man, it was nuts. So it was I've never seen this sort of onside kick before. Another trick play this week. It was crazy. They lined up like a normal kickoff, and he just rocketed it into one of the front Bears guys, like intentionally, like in tennis when you serve it at somebody to try to hit them to get the point, or like when you hit it at somebody, it was like that. He just rocketed it right at him, and it bounced off the dude's leg and came back towards the Lions, and they got it. It was insane. At first, I thought he just like miskicked it, like he kicked it poorly and it happened to go well. But then they showed the replay and it showed and it looked pretty intentional. But it was crazy. Oh, I'm tired. All right. The studs on team Too Many Cooks. Julian Edelman had 18. I guess it's stud singular. Julian Edelman had 18.9 fantasy points. He had 6 catches for 106 yards, and he's really the only reliable wide receiver in New York right now. Like, no, I mean, I guess Tom Brady's wide receiver 2 is James White, essentially. But otherwise, he has nobody else to pass it to. Nobody else is really consistent. Philip Dorsett had a good game every once in a while. Mohamed Sanu's there, but he's really not getting the work. So Julian Edelman's really the only one that Tom Brady's looking to. Julian Edelman and James White. But at the duds, in the duds position or category, Tevin Coleman had 2 fantasy points and Hunter Henry had 2 fantasy points. So there's that. Matchup number 4, Big Ben's Bathroom versus Try and Stop Me from Auto Picking. Try and Stop Me from Auto Picking took the victory, 107.5 to 92. He got a clutch win against Big Ben's Bathroom to keep his playoff hopes alive. So he's still in the running as well. Big Ben's Bathroom's stud, Aaron Rodgers, had 28.1 fantasy points. He had 243 yards and 4 touchdowns. Talked about him already. He's a beast. We can move on. In the duds category, he had Zach Ertz with 3.9 fantasy points. Very unfortunate day. I guess Shawn Jeffery took all the targets away from Zach Ertz this week. Aaron Jones had 5.1 fantasy points. That was really frustrating because they were playing against the Giants. So you're looking for a much bigger game from Aaron Jones in that game. Just everything was a passing touchdown. So that's kind of just how it went this week. And then DJ Chark, who only had 5.7 points. Now, going forward, though, So, going forward, DJ Chark is going to be a beast because guess who's back? Gardner Minshew.
Mustache.
You got the mustache. I was thinking about shaving down to the mustache after hearing the Gardner Minshew news, but I have yet to do it. I may have to do it, but
Chad
Chad
shaved
did it. Yes.
him down to a mustache now too, though.
Yeah, he told me he was going to do that. He's like, I can't wear this into work, so I have to shave it to a mustache after I get home.
Yeah.
He didn't. Did he go into work yesterday with the Fu Manchu?
He shaved it yesterday morning before work.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was hoping that he might try to pull off the Fu Manchu at least one day at work, but he didn't do it. But yeah, I think DJ Chark's going to be a beast going forward. He's got he's got his favorite quarterback back, so I think he's going to do great things. And then team try and stop me from auto picking the studs this week. Patrick Mahomes had 19.5 fantasy points. It wasn't a fantastic day from Patrick Mahomes. From Pat Mahomes, you're looking for like 35-point football games, but it was still a solid showing. And then Curtis Samuel from the flex position got him 14.5 fantasy points. And then New Orleans defense got him 15 fantasy points this week. So he had a few pretty decent games on his team. And then he didn't really have any duds this week. He had a lot of like decent floor games, like 7 or 8 points. I couldn't really pick out somebody that was too much of a dud for team auto pick. And then matchup number 5, my tight end hurts when I fart versus the running Mayfields. Now, my tight end hurts when I fart won 109.5 fantasy points to 72.2 fantasy points. He was shooting for that top score this week, but unfortunately he couldn't get Tyler Lockett to pull through for him. So he was a dud for my tight end hurts when I fart. And then Deshaun Watson was a stud this week. He had 28.4 fantasy points. He was the number 1 overall fantasy quarterback. And then he had Todd Gurley on his team who had 18 fantasy points. He had 95 rushing yards for 1 touchdown and 1 catch for 20 yards. So pretty solid game from Todd Gurley. Now, to the most unfortunate team, one of the most unfortunate teams in our fantasy football league, the running Mayfields. Since he only had 72 fantasy points this week, he didn't really have too many studs. No real studs this week. And his duds were Jameis Winston with 10.7 points, Will Fuller with 1.3 fantasy points, and OBJ with 4.4 fantasy points. What do you think about OBJ this year?
I think he's been a little bit of a disappointment from where he was drafted at. You were saying that Jarvis Landry was actually the number 1 now in Cleveland.
He basically is.
I was skeptical about OBJ, though. That's why I didn't draft him, because I didn't know how he'd be responding in Cleveland. So
yeah, I mean, I think all the hype, I think I feel like it was correctly placed on OBJ, because I thought that like anybody is better than Eli Manning. So like Baker Mayfield is an upgrade over Eli Manning, but I think what we didn't realize is all the other weapons that they would have in Cleveland and that the offense would run differently. So like with Jarvis Landry there, he's kind of taken a lot of the volume away. And then Nick Chubb, they actually have, I mean, I guess they had Saquon last year too, but Nick Chubb has taken a lot of work away from OBJ as well. I think they've been more focused on running the ball than they have on passing it in general. And he didn't really have much of the chemistry with Baker Mayfield at all this year. Jarvis Landry kind of, took that over. But yeah, I think Jarvis has been the one. I think that's kind of how it turned out, which is really surprising because OBJ is talented, just not getting the work done this year.
they have a lot of talent in Cleveland, though.
They do, which makes it even more unfortunate that they're not a good team. Like, they have so many good players, they just can't get it together. So, I don't know, it's just not clicking over there in Cleveland. But now, on to my favorite segment of every single week. And I know you love this segment too because you just mentioned it to me. But the waiver wire team that would kick all of our asses. Now, do you have this up or no?
No, I don't have anything. This is all unscripted for me.
Unscripted. All right. Do you know who the quarterback is on this waiver wire team? Take a guess.
So I have no clue what it is.
No clue. Ryan Fitzpatrick, Fitzmagic, had a fantastic game this week. He was on waiver wires. He had 26.8 fantasy points. The running back one, also from Miami, Patrick Laird. You know Patrick Laird, that famous running back from Miami? Everybody knows Patrick Laird. Nobody knows Patrick Laird. He's the backup to Kalen Ballage and, whoever is still down in Miami running the ball. So, yeah, he had 14.8 fantasy points. He just happened to fall into the end zone. So, the running back two on this week was Nyheim Hines with 11 fantasy points. The running back one wide receiver one was Cole Beasley with 20 fantasy points. He had a beast of a game.
It was a good revenge game, too.
It was a good revenge game. Yeah, Cole Beasley went ham. And then wide receiver two, James Washington with 19.1 fantasy points. That was interesting. He's Duck Hodges' favorite target. So the tight end on this waiver wire team that would beat all of us was Tyler Higbee, who had 20.2 fantasy points. And then the flex position was Anthony Miller, your boy.
Hey.
Straight out of Chicago.
Recognition for Chi-Town.
Exactly. He had 18.5 fantasy points. And then the defense was the Buccaneers defense. They had 24 fantasy points. They had a pick six, so I think that helped out. And then, or no, was it a pick six or was it the blocked kick? Did they play against the Colts this week?
I have no idea.
I think they played the Colts. Yeah, I think it was the blocked kick returned for a touchdown. And then the kicker one this week was Brandon McManus with 15 fantasy points. Guess how much?
Wait a minute. Oh, never mind. This is the waiver wire.
Yeah. Guess, it's not the top player. It's the top unowned player. Yeah. So this team would have gotten you. Do you have a guess on how much this team would have gotten you?
I don't remember all the totals that you said, but I'm gonna guess 162.
Oh, that was close. 169.4 fantasy points. So that would have beat everybody by over 50 points. So we could have just picked up this team and won this week for free. We should try to do that every week. Just pick up a team full of random players.
I think we should make a new rule. If the waiver wire team beats the number one team, scoring team, by over 50 points, no one gets the $10.
We should do something like that. And it goes to the champion at the end. Or it goes in the commissioner's pocket. So that's happened 2 or 3 times this year where they've outscored them by over 50 points. So, yeah, it's been crazy. It's really nuts how like a random player can just go off, and you're sitting here between like Juju and some other wide receiver who both of them end up getting you like 4 points, and you're like, well, fuck. And then you look on the waiver wire and you see Cole Beasley goes off for 20 points. You're just like, what the heck? How does this happen? So, all right, on to a new segment this week and only this week, the playoff scenarios. So this is exciting. I don't know if you read through that whole chat from today.
A little bit.
A little bit of it. All right, so some of this might be a surprise to you. And actually, what I have here is technically wrong now. Some of it, because I found out a different rule in the middle of the day today. But we'll start off at the top with the teams who are all automatically in. Too Many Cooks, Andrew's team, automatically in. Big Ben's Bathroom, automatically in. Chad, he's in. And with the win this week, Zerline, I Never Hit You is in. So Benaya, Chad, and Courts are already locked for 3 of the 4 positions. Now we have 4 people playing for that 4th position this week. So this is going to be crazy. So we have, we'll start with my team because I have the greatest chance to get in because I decide my own fate. If I win this week, then I am in the playoffs. So the Scary Terriers will be in. If I lose and team auto pick loses, so James, then it creates a 3-way tie between me, James, and Neil because Neil is playing against James this week and he's 1 game behind both of us. So that creates a 3-way tie between the 3 of us. And if that happens, and then, well, so that could create a 3-way tie. And then if Aaron also wins this week, he could create a 4-way tie between the 4 of us. So if I lose and James loses and Aaron wins, 4-way tie between me, James, Neil, and Aaron for that 4th playoff spot. And that is decided by the total points for because our original tiebreaker is head-to-head. So that's, you take the record of us playing against each other. Now, that would be okay if each team played each other the same number of times this year, but it doesn't work out that way because, like, I've played James twice this year, but I've only played Neil and Aaron once each. So that tiebreaker, I believe, doesn't work because not everybody played everybody the same number of times. So I think it just skips that tiebreaker altogether and goes straight to points for. So right now, the points for category looks like this. The current total points for those 4 teams, Aaron is in the lead with 1,431.6 points. I'm in second with 1,413.7 points. Neil is in third with 1,405.5 points. And James is way behind everybody, 1,325.6 points. So James is really hoping that he does not lose this game because that means he's for sure out of the playoffs, essentially. He will have to outscore the next person by like 88 points. And if he loses to Neil, then he's definitely out. So James, in order for him to get in, he needs to win and I need to lose. And then James will be by himself as the 4th seed and there will be no ties. So James can get in that way. I can get in by winning. Even if James wins, I will still win because I have the head-to-head tiebreaker with him. Since it's not a 3-way tie, it doesn't just skip that and go to the points for tiebreaker. Does that make sense? So, what's that?
It makes sense.
It makes sense? Okay. Yeah. So, and then if I lose, James loses, and then Aaron and Neil both win. If Neil and Aaron get the same score, then Aaron is getting into the playoffs. If Neil outscores Aaron by 24 points, then Neil gets in. Or 26 points, then Neil gets in. If I lose, but I still outscore Aaron by 15 points and Neil by actually he could still score like 5 points more than me. Basically, I need to outscore everybody else to get into the playoffs, essentially. So basically it comes down to if I don't win and James doesn't win, then it's the highest scoring team. That's the synopsis of it. So that's basically it. Everybody else is eliminated. So I'm sorry for everybody else, but none of you are making the playoffs. I know. I know. It's only 3 of you, I think, because we have 3 people in, 4 people fighting for a spot, and then just 3 more. So Brandon is out, you're out, and Ryo is out. I'm sorry, guys. But you can still fight for $10 each week. And you can, like, Ryo can try to screw up my playoff chances this week. And you can try to screw up. I don't know who you're playing this week.
Of course.
Oh, you can't do anything. But you can try to get $10. So that's what's important. That's why I did this. That's why I'm paying out $10 each week, because I want you guys to keep playing and try to get that $10 every week. So yeah, so that's the playoff matchups this week. Now, do you got to get going soon?
I got till 8 o'clock. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I have a couple of questions.
Favorite thing.
Yes, we're gonna do this instead of. Let's do a quick. Are you able to pull up the matchups this week or no?
Not, but I'll still do it though. I'm gonna go just by guessing off the top of my head. All unscripted off the dome here.
All right, let me pull up the matchups for this week. We'll do them rapid fire here. So the first one is the Scary Terrys versus Josh Jacobs, Jingleheimer Schmidt. So me versus Ryo. Who do you have? Do you want me to list off some of the matchups or?
Yeah, just the names.
All right, I have Kyler Murray, Dalvin Cook, Chris Carson, Phillip Lindsay, Keenan Allen, Cooper Kupp, George Kittle. I don't know who my defense is going to be yet. Still working on that. And Dustin Hopkins. And he has Carson Wentz, Josh Jacobs against Tennessee, Ronald Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, John Brown against Baltimore, Dallas Goedert, Christian Kirk, and Buffalo defense, and Josh Lambo. Jason Lambo? Josh Lambo.
Taking the Scary Terrys.
Taking the Scary Terrys. All right, good. Me too. I pick me every week. It's worked out more often than not for me, just by 1. All right, the next matchup is Too Many Cooks versus Rogers Cup. So this is your matchup. Do you need me to read you anything from this matchup?
No, I am absolutely 100% taking Rogers Cup in this one.
Good. I think. Oh, Courts has sat everybody this week. He's put everybody out of his starting lineup.
You gotta rest him for the playoffs.
I guess so. So I am also going to pick you. All right. The next matchup is Zerline, I Never Hit You. You're tearing me apart versus Big Ben's Bathroom. So this is Benaya has Russell Wilson, Derrick Henry, Melvin Gordon, James Jones, Devante Parker, Darren Waller, Sony Michel, and Philadelphia's defense, and Greg Zerline. And Chad has Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, Saquon Barkley, Amari Cooper, DJ Chark, Zach Ertz, and Lev Bell, and Baltimore's defense.
His team bounces back, so I'm going to take Big Ben's Bathroom this week.
All right, you take Big Ben's Bathroom. I think this is tough. He does have really good matchups this week. I think I'm going to take Big Ben's Bathroom as well. Oh, I think Benaya was wondering. Oh, I don't know. I'll have to figure that out a little bit later. He was wondering what the matchups are going to be in the playoffs. I don't know that right now. But, all right, matchup number 4, Mixin Mac versus Try and Stop Me from Auto-Picking. This is Mixin Mac has Lamar Jackson, Alvin Kamara against San Francisco. Joe Mixon, Chris Godwin, Devontae Adams, Jacob Hollister, David Montgomery, Jacksonville's D, and Brett Mayer, who got -1 fantasy points this week. Versus Pat Mahomes, Mark Ingram, Leonard Fournette, Emmanuel Sanders, Curtis Samuel, Kyle Rudolph, Jarvis Landry, and New Orleans defense. And Chris Boswell.
I'll be taking Mixin Mac in that matchup.
All right, you're taking Mixin Mac.
I'm gonna go 5 for 5 this week, by the way.
Is that what you think? Is that what you think? I really like. Actually, I don't know. I was gonna say I like try and stop me from auto picking some matchups this week, but I don't think I do. But Alvin Kamara's against San Francisco, Lamar Jackson's against Buffalo. Yeah, I'll have to go with Mixin Mac as well. We've been the same for all 4 picks so far. So, all right. Then matchup number 5 is my tight end hurts when I fart versus the running Mayfields. This is a rematch from last week. I don't know why they're playing each other again, but that's just how ESPN set it up. So I don't even have to take a look at the teams. I'm picking my tight end hurts when I fart. But I can read you the teams if you want me to. Do you want me to read you the teams?
I think he's going to repeat again and win this last matchup here. So,
all right. Sounds good. Well, we picked all the same things. So if you go 5 for 5, I go 5 for 5.
Would that be your first time all season?
That would. I've gotten 4 for 5. I've never gotten 5 for 5. All right. So we are going to start with Andrew Kortz's questions that he sent us already. So you are aware of these. Most of the time I try to surprise my guests. I know. Well, I have 1 or 2 surprises for you. So Andrew Kortz asked, if you know you're out of contention, so Adam, who would you most want to win the championship? Or least, whichever you prefer. Who would you least want to win the championship? We'll make it both questions.
Well, so for wanting to win, I really don't care who it is. I think it's going to either be Chad or Corey. And I don't really care who it is between them because, 1, Andrew's a humble winner. But 2, Chad, I wouldn't mind the new blood winning either. So for the second part of the question, I really just don't want Benaya to win. Because I don't want to do 52 times a year that he's a champion. So
that's true. See, I will answer that question as well. Obviously, if I'm in contention, I want me to win. But if I were not in contention, I don't want Kortz to win again. I realize he's a humble winner and he doesn't talk about it, but he just wins all the time, every single year. And I really don't. Maybe this is going to sound bad, but I really don't want Chad to win either because he's new to the league. He doesn't deserve a victory right off the bat. He has to live in anguish first before he wins a title, like all the rest of us losers here. So, so I hope that I win, but if I were not in it, then I guess James would be in the champion in the playoffs probably, and I would want James to win. I would want the auto pick team to win.
I like that.
Yeah. So. Imagine him barely getting into the playoffs on a last week win, and just dominating both Chad and Kortz. I think that would be fantastic. And Benaya, because otherwise Benaya would brag the shit out of winning. So
always.
All right, the second question from Kortz: how lame is it that Adam deserted us for Guilford after junior high / after freshman year of high school? I say it's pretty lame because I missed my best buddy in high school. However, in hindsight, you said that it was the best move for you, so I am okay with it. I got to hang out with you anyways because you were right down the street. So
I was going to say it's not very lame for the exact same reason because it was the best decision that I made in my high school career. And because you saw me all the time anyways, too, on the weekends, so it didn't really matter. Exactly. I never saw you anyways, unless we played slapjack or blackjack at lunchtime or something.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, we didn't really hang out too much during school, so after school is where it was.
When classes all the time. Now just in the regular podunk classes.
Nah, it wasn't just that. But
had I known that I would have had that much fun at Guilford, though, I would have left my freshman year.
there you go. Yeah, it sounded like you had a lot of fun. So you got a lot of good, new good friends from there. So that was good. What'd you say?
I was telling courts is the kick-ass decision to leave there.
There you go.
So
there you
not
go.
late.
All right, I have a surprise question for you from Benaya. He wants to know, besides Zeke, who is your other keeper? He's assuming that you're going to – I guess we all assume you're going to keep Zeke. Who's your other keeper?
Probably the most recent guy I traded for.
Michael Thomas? That would make sense. That would make sense. So that's what you're thinking, Zeke and Michael Thomas for your
I'm thinking Michael Thomas.
There you go. All right. You heard it here first.
I was going to use them in a trade for Christian McCaffrey, though.
Yeah.
His typical question is like, oh, sorry, I was too busy, wasn't paying attention. Or as soon as I bring up CMC, he shuts down for a couple of days.
I mean, I would too.
I'm on to you.
To be completely honest, I would have done the same thing. So I really don't feel too bad. Yeah, that's all the questions I got. So
I got one.
You have one for me?
I got questions for both of us.
All right.
So, because I forgot to send it in. So, hi, Jason. My question to you is, who is in the league your favorite person to play against, and who is your least favorite person to play against?
Can my answer be the same person? Like for both? Yeah. It's Ryo. I've got my rivalry with Ryo. I love playing against him because then I get the shit talk and everything. At the same time, I at least like it because he's rooting against me every single week. So so that's my answer. I got my rivalry with Ryo, so I have to say that I hate playing against him, but at the same time I love it. So what's your answer to that?
So I got two answers for the first one.
Two answers.
Yeah. So for my favorite teams to play against, one is always Courts, because Courts is always a perennial all-star in the league here, and I always feel like I have a pretty damn good team too. And it seems like whenever we match up, it's a very high-powered matchup, and I'll usually take him in the regular season, so I'm feeling pretty good. But then come postseason, he'll clean me up. So it's like two scholars, a game of chess here between us. Our never-ending trade talks with no trades and our waiver wire pickups, and it's a scholarly matchup. I always think of it as.
There you go.
Other answer for that part, though, for the part who I like to play against is Benaya, because he and I feel like go at it every year.
Oh yeah,
we have a beef. Benaya, we have a beef, and it's not like that really gentleman-like beef like it is with Andrew and I. It feels like it's like I'm gonna take your face and shove it in the mud in the ground type of beef. Stomp on it.
Yeah.
So we're always dogging each other's teams. And then he'll shit talk my team, and then I'll beat his ass then too. So
yeah. So is he also your least favorite person to play against?
No, my least favorite person to play is Aaron, because of the fact that he's beaten me last season 2 times without full lineups, and I had complete lineups.
That's the thing. He never checks his lineup, and he still somehow always has a good team.
And it pisses me off. So
yeah, it drives me nuts how you can be now so nonchalant about fantasy and still do really well. So I don't know, but there's your answers to all of the questions that anybody was ever wondering about this fantasy football podcast. So, or our fantasy football league. So Well, thank you so much for being on, Adam. It was more than a pleasure to have you on. I'm glad you could make it, and we could get you done just in time for bingo tonight. So that's good. So I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm looking forward to having you on in the future. Maybe not this year. We'll see how it ends up going this year. But in the future for sure. And we're gonna try to get everyone on here, and it's gonna be a blast, and it's just gonna be fun. So thank you so much for being on it. Oh, for sure. So, all right. Good luck to all of you Cho bags this week, except for, well, I just have to win. I don't have to hate on everybody else. I'm just going to win this week and get me into the playoffs. To the rest of you guys, good luck with your matchups, but it's basically futile. So, you guys have a good week, and I will catch you next week. Goodbye.